Just with our speakers, we have Imam, as I said, Sabah Ahmadi, the young Imam. He's already with us. We're just trying to get Elizabeth up because she's in Italy. We're so international. The young Imam, Sabah, thank you so much for joining me again. Lovely to see you. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day, I have to say to you.
Thank you. Thanks. It's nice to be back again. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, let's talk about these strikes first. You know, what is your feeling when it comes to faith and where there's a portion of the population that, in their eyes, is being exploited, if you like, work-wise? I'm saying in their eyes because, and there are a lot of eyes on this particular matter. What is your feeling from a faith perspective?
Yeah, fantastic. First of all, Tricia, I can't see you, so if I'm looking elsewhere, I'm not being rude, but I just see I can't see you. But anyway, when it comes to strikes, I think we live in a country where you have the right to protest, and in a religious point of view, you can protest as long as it's peaceful. But those who are protesting should also bear in mind and consider the effect it has on society at large. On the livelihood of people, because it can have an effect on, for example, look at freight trains. They won't be able to come in, so our shelves will be empty, and it has a knock-on effect on everyone at large. But I think the issue here, and the question that's got to be asked here, is that the issue is between the worker, the train company, and the government. And the victim, unfortunately, are us, the public, those individuals who work in the public sector, teachers, doctors, those who work in the emergency services, who are trying to go about their day and put food on the table and live their livelihood. So I think it's sad to say that, unfortunately, in this situation, the victim is the public. Is that right? I think that's another question that's got to be asked. But it is very unfortunate.
So I was going to say. So I was going to say to you, let me just give you a hypothetical situation. If there was a leader of a union who came to you and said, Sabah, you know, this is what I want to, you know, I want my workforce to go on strike completely. You know, do I have your blessing? How would you answer that?
I think it's a very individual choice. It is a very personal choice. Do you go on strike or do you not go on strike? But purely from a faith perspective, you can protest as long as it's peaceful, and I think that's really important to remember. So, if it, obviously it's up to the individual and the union themselves, and the individuals and the workers. But from a faith perspective, if it's peaceful, then yeah, you can peacefully protest. But I think it's also important to bear in mind the knock-on effect it can have on society at large, and that's vital.
Yeah, and I'm guessing if you were counselling somebody, that's something that you would remind them of. We're just trying to see if we can get Elizabeth. Hopefully we can get her on the phone if we can't actually see her, because I'd like to get her take on this before we move on to the next subject.
Yeah.
And okay, let's see if is she there. Just before she comes on, as a dad, as a father, because it's his Father's Day, from a faith perspective, how is fatherhood seen? If you were to give a talk about fatherhood and the importance of fatherhood, what would you say?
Do you know, I don't think Father's Day should be on one day, Tricia. I think Father's Day and Mother's Day should be every day, right? Let's just make that clear.
Yay!
But I think, you know what? You know, as a parent, you've got to have a massive responsibility. I'm a dad, and I've got a responsibility to raise my children. And I think I have a responsibility to lead by example, to try and instill those values and morals, which I believe are true and fair and just. And the motto of my community is love for all and hatred for none. And I want to instill those values in my children so that they grow up being positive members and contributors to the society in which they live in. And Islam teaches that you can't fulfill God's rights until you fulfill the rights of his creation. So I want to be that father. I want to be that dad. And I'm sure other young fathers and older fathers who are watching this, I'm not discriminating anyone, they're going to watch this and be like, no, you know what? Absolutely. I also want to give the best upbringing to my children. And I think bearing in mind the moral compass and bearing in mind the foundations and the teachings that my faith teaches me, I hope and pray to God that I'm able to instill those good values and morals within my children so that they can look back and say, you know what?
Absolutely.
My dad was a good dad.
He was a good
He
dad.
taught me some good things.
Okay. Welcome back with me, Trisha Goddard, on our faith panel, Sabah Ahmadi, the young Imam, and we finally got hold of Elizabeth Charlesworth live from Italy. Don't say we're not international. Elizabeth, welcome to the show. We can hear you, although we won't be able to see you. What are you doing in Italy?
Well, I do spend most of my life here.
Ah, I see. And you're there for a particular festival, I understand.
Well, it just happened to coincide, but it is an absolutely marvellous festival, yes. I sent some
Okay, so we've been talking
earlier on.
Oh, okay. So we've been talking about faith when it comes to striking, because Britain's about to be crippled with rail strikes and what have you. From a faith point of view, what is your feeling about big organisations who have massive strikes like this?
Oh, that's a tough one, isn't it? Look, Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of them, these little ones, you do to me. So I would say to strikers, think that you're doing it to Jesus and to management and people that are supposed to be negotiating. What would Jesus do? That's a really important thing to remember, that Jesus is in all of us. And whatever we do to each other, we're actually doing to Jesus. So, that's what I have to say.
So you're saying, are you saying on the part of the people who will have hardships because of this? And Sabah, before you came on, Sabah Ahmadi, the young Imam, was saying, the supermarket shelves that will be empty and people who won't be able to get to work when they have to get to work and what have you. You're saying that Jesus would say that these strikers are doing a disservice, if you like, to those people.
Exactly. That's just exactly it. But I'd say to the strikers and to the management, because it's not a one-way street. It's two sides who are in dispute, and I would say get it sorted and think about the effect that you're having on the rest of mankind.
Sounds like very sage words indeed. Let's go on to our next. Let's go on to our next subject. Now, the next subject is, we were saying, with the bishops, all the archbishops, and the flights to Rwanda. Just yesterday, Archbishop Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, tweeted his opposition to those flights, and all the other archbishops' opposition to the flights. It's not because the destination is Rwanda. He wrote, "We would oppose such heartless treatment wherever people were sent. We oppose this policy because it outsources our responsibilities and treats vulnerable and traumatized people without any kind of dignity, compassion, or justice. This is not how God calls us to treat each other." How do you feel about that, Elizabeth?
Well, I applaud his words, because that's exactly what I've just been saying, that what you do unto the least of them, you do unto me. And I would say that the Archbishop is right in that, but on the other hand, it is the job of the church to keep the government up to scratch. It's the conscience, it's the moral thermometer, if you like. It's been like it down the age. Men have lost their heads over it. Thomas More lost his head. Thomas à Becket lost his head. Oh, well, not quite, but the same thing. And it's the job of the church to do that, to say to government, look, you might have, in your own mind, have a good and valid reason for doing this, but just look at it from the other point of view. Go to the other end of the telescope and look down it that way, and then think about it. And I'm not saying whether they're right or wrong, because nobody can say that. But the church does have a role to play in keeping the government in touch with its own conscience.
It's a really good point. Let me go to Sabah Ahmadi. How do you feel about this, Sabah?
Trisha, I just want to echo the point that Elizabeth made, that religion gives you the moral perspective. Ultimately, the government will formulate the law. But when religion gives their point of view, it's more from a moral perspective, and also looking at the society at large. So I think it's really important to sometimes go to religious organizations and get a fresh perspective time to time, because it can really help balance the playing field. I think the question is going to be asked, Tricia, is the hundreds of millions of pounds that are being spent on detention centres, the Home Office dealing with the asylum cases, security, and all these hundreds of millions of pounds that are being spent on deterring people from coming to our borders, if that money was spent in addressing the issues that are making these people come to the borders in the first place, the world would be in a different place.
It's a good point. It is a good point. So you would agree that it sometimes, well, it often is the role of religious leaders and faiths to say, hang on, you're talking about hard-hearted things or the head. This is what the heart, this is the moral point of view. So you're saying that that is a legitimate role.
You know, religion teaches justice. I think justice is what is the core principle here, that everyone should be treated fairly. Everyone is entitled to peace, security, home, food, clothing, education. And just because someone lives in a place different to where you live, doesn't mean that they're not entitled to their basic human needs and day-to-day living requirements. So I think justice is key, and that should be the overall principle in dealing with people across the spectrum. Treat people in a fair and just manner wherever they come from, regardless of who they are or what language they speak.
Let me go back to you. Thank you. Let me come back to you, Elizabeth. Do you think, and we covered this in a previous show, but do you think that people forget some of the stories that from the Bible, for instance, the Good Samaritan? Do you think we've come into an age where we think about our lot more than reaching out to those who are so much less fortunate wherever they come from?
I would also, you've quoted the Good Samaritan, I would also quote Jesus' first encounter with Mary Magdalene. I think it's his first recorded encounter with Mary Magdalene, when the Pharisees bring her as a sinner and ask Jesus to condemn her. And he said, right, who is without sin? Who will cast the first stone? And I think that's what we've got to remember, that we are all sinners. And it's not for us to judge. It's for God to judge. And, yeah.
But the whole point of extending a hand, and I came back to like the Good Samaritan. Do you think that this is like the nation as a whole needs to be reminded of that story? You know, do you think
Actually,
today that maybe we think just about us?
No, I think institutionally we may need to be reminded of it, but on a day-to-day basis, in our own human relations. My neighbour here in Italy has just taken in a young lad from the Ivory Coast. He's just taken him into his house he described him as a guest. And I think on an individual basis that is happening a lot, but institutionally it's not, and that's where the problems are.
That's a really good point. Imam, let me come back to you. Elizabeth makes a really good point that on a community level, we are often extending the hand of kindness and helping people, but institutionally, maybe not so much.
Tricia, she makes a very good point. And I think we can cast our minds back to the situation of COVID, where there were hard times. We all passed through and lived through those times. But I feel like the community came together so much during that time. We were knocking on our neighbour's door or messaging them saying, listen, do you need anything? We're going to the shop, or helping them with the shopping, or even part of our community, we would shop for the vulnerable and give them food and help them out with medication and deliveries and so on and so forth. So I think it's about having empathy and understanding that not everyone is as fortunate as we are. And I think once we put ourselves in someone else's shoes, and it reminds me of the teaching of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings of God be upon him, where he said that, look at those who are less fortunate than you are, rather than those who have more, that really drives home the understanding of how we should spend our wealth and give charity and look after those who are around us. So I think putting yourself in someone else's shoes is really important to really understand where these people are coming from. They've uprooted everything from their own country, their livelihood, their family, their friends, their whatever that might be, the homes that they might have built for 20, 30 years. So no one comes here like in thinking that, oh my gosh, like I love leaving everything I've had behind. They come here seeking hope,
they're desperate.
security and peace. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. And just Elizabeth, just to finish with you as well, I asked him sorry, go on. I asked the Imam before about Father's Day. It's in the UK and all over. From a faith point of view, what message would you give to dads out there?
Play your part. Be a good role model. Love your wife. Love your children. Support them. Listen to them. Don't just assume that they will like what you like. Listen to them. Watch them at play. What is it that gets them out of bed in the morning? What is it that lights their fire? And don't make assumptions about them. Let them grow in their own way, because we're all different. And we're all different from our parents. My parents used to be quite amazed, in fact, puzzled as to why I followed a route of classical music. They couldn't understand it. It wasn't for them. But they let me do it. And they helped me and they support me. They bought me viola. They paid for my singing lessons, and so on and so on. And then suddenly, when my dad got to be about 50, he discovered classical music for himself. And suddenly he realised that it had come to it through me. So watch your children.
Thank you.
From your children. And I don't have any children, so I can say this quite easily. But
that's a lovely message. Lovely message. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you so much to the young Imam. I love our faith panels.